Blood. Nationalism. For centuries, Germany was not the one nation it was today, but rather an idea, a dream, ein Traum. In the mid to the late 1800s, that dream became a reality. Over the span of 3 wars, Otto von Bismarck led the state of Prussia to homogenize their neighbors under nationalism into one of the leading powers of Europe, challenging the likes of Great Britain and France, forever changing the balance of power. Through conflict with Denmark, Austria, France, and the Catholic Church, and compromise with the fractured German states, Otto von Bismarck was able to consolidate the formation of the strongest nation-state of its time. In 1648, the 30 Years' War between the anti-Habsburg states and the Habsburg states and their allies, including the Holy Roman Empire, was ended with the Peace of Westphalia. The contents of the compromise saw the Holy Roman Empire, one of the losers of the war, break into 1,800 states, dashing the hopes of a continued unified German state for the next 2 centuries. These imperialist states were impossible to be controlled by the Holy Roman Emperor, and were ruled by separate nobles who chose their state's national religion. The struggle against this fragmentation arose in the early 1800s during the Napoleonic Wars, as Napoleon Bonaparte's conquest of Europe saw the subjugation of the German state. The presence of a foreign power in control of their homeland led German-speaking individuals to rally under the banner of throne and altar. These Germans were among the earliest proponents of nationalism, the belief in forming a nation along the lines of a shared ethnicity, culture, language, geography, and religion. Among these early German nationalists were Johann Gottlieb Fichte and George Ludwig Engelbach, who respectively gave speeches and formed uniquely German gymnasiums to foster patriotism. Together, these self-proclaimed Germans voiced their desire to form a sovereign nation based on liberal democracy, constitutionalism, representative government, and popular sovereignty. Following the defeat of Napoleon, the European powers gathered at the Congress of Vienna from 1814 to 1815 to restore order and the balance of power. The compromise of the meeting saw the map of Europe redrawn, and of this, the German Confederation was created. Influenced by Austrian Foreign Minister Clemens von Metternich, Austria became the president of this new confederation. Though Austria presided over this newly created union, it was more ceremonial, forming a rivalry between Austria and Prussia over achieving the unification of the states into a sole nation. This rivalry led Prussia's practice of free trade to evolve into the Zollverein in 1834. This free trade union included the majority of the German states, but specifically excluded Austria. The smaller German states slowly became dependent on Prussian goods, making Prussia the leading economic power in the region. In 1848, liberal nationalists demanded a constitution and the formation of a new national German state, bringing them into conflict with conservative aristocrats who desired less reforms. The idea of a Greater Germany, or Großdeutschland with Austria, and a Lesser Germany, Kleindeutschland, that excluded Austria, were considered by the Parliament in Frankfurt. The Lesser Germany was even proposed to King Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia, but he turned it down out of his own ambition while the revolution was forcefully ended by Prussian forces. In 1857, Friedrich Wilhelm IV suffered a stroke, allowing his brother Wilhelm I to ascend to the throne as regent, and then king in 1861. Wilhelm I and his advisors argued for increased taxes and a greater defense budget to double the army size. Parliament's rejection of his plan led Wilhelm I to appoint Otto Edward Leopold, or Otto von Bismarck, to the position of Minister-President of Prussia, in the hopes of securing a strong army and a unified German state. Bismarck sought to act on the Prussian state's self-interest and unification through military might, or blood and iron. Bismarck seized the opportunity to exercise this new army with the Schleswig-Holstein issue in 1864. The issue centers around Denmark's plan to integrate the duchies of Schleswig and Holstein into its administration, despite the two being part of the German Confederation. In response, Bismarck allied with Austria to swiftly defeat Denmark. The result saw Prussia control the 2 duchies, as well as several more. With the removal of Denmark from German affairs, it was now time for Bismarck to force Austria out of order to replace the German Confederation with a stronger federal system dominated by Prussia and centered in Berlin. In 1866, Bismarck took a gamble as the Austro-Prussian War broke out between the 2 German states. Lasting for just 7 weeks, the established power of Austria was upset by Prussia's new gains in military might. Despite the war's short tenure, it would have had drastic changes on the political landscape of Germany, as Austria was forced out of German affairs. The German Confederation was dissolved, and in its place, the new North German Confederation, led by Prussia, had emerged. To ensure that Prussia's ambitions were agreeable, Bismarck had to make compromises with the parliament. He made a federal constitution for the new confederation that allowed sovereignty for each member state and made the King of Prussia as the executive. Bismarck now needed to unify the southern German states who were still reluctant on union with Prussia. They were more aligned with Austria. To Bismarck, the obvious solution was more blood and iron, once more with a common enemy. However, in order to successfully secure the support of the South, war had to be declared on Prussia, and by extension, all Germans. In 1870, Prince Leopold of Prussia, a cousin of Wilhelm I, was offered the Spanish crown because of its vacancy since the 1868 revolution. Napoleon III, Emperor of France on the other hand, contested this as he saw the possibility of a Prussian-Spanish alliance which would work against the interests of France and disrupt the dynastic balance of power. He requested King Wilhelm not to allow this to happen, and so the king wrote a response and sent it to Bismarck. Already embittered by France's attempt to annex Belgium, the minister-president saw this as the perfect opportunity to start a war against a unifying threat. He sent to France an edited version of the king's response that was effectively an insult, causing a political uproar and France to declare war on Prussia. This made France the aggressor, leading the southern German states to rally under Bismarck's proposed compromises and treaties that added them to the Confederation. Together, under the banner of nationalism, they formed the unified German army to fight against France. The Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871 saw King Wilhelm I personally command this combined force of Germans against Napoleon III. In 1870, Napoleon III was forced to surrender to a decisive defeat at the Battle of Sedan, signaling the end of the Bonaparte dynasty and the Second French Empire, with a decisive loss, though the war would continue with the newly proclaimed Third Republic of France. Paris surrendered on January 28, 1871, and a compromise was drawn between the two states with the Treaty of Frankfurt. The contents of this compromise allowed Prussia to annex Alsace and Lorraine into its confederation. The most important consequence of this war would be seen in France's Palace of Versailles, as King Wilhelm I was named the emperor of the newly unified German Empire. Over 200 years after the Treaty of Westphalia, Germany was finally unified as the Second Reich, with Wilhelm I as Kaiser and Bismarck as Chancellor. Chancellor Bismarck's new focus would be on ensuring that the German population could be undivided in their loyalty to the state. The German population had long existed with both Protestants and Catholics since the time of Martin Luther. This divide had formed a strong rift between the two Christian faiths over how they viewed the German national identity. In addition, Pope Pius IX's syllabus of errors denounced liberalism, progressivism, and modernism, inciting anger from Bismarck's liberal nationalist supporters. To downplay the divide, reformist supporters, and forge a shared culture, Bismarck enacted his Kulturkampf, or struggle for civilization. He planned on weakening the German division of the Catholic Church and bring it under national control. Bismarck avoided directly confronting the Church and instead relied on legislative restrictions that aimed at reducing its presence. The Kulturkampf went far past its original intent, as it arrested laymen who voiced their opinion, fired Catholic civil servants, and censored religious press. Growing discontent with the Kulturkampf allowed Ludwig Winthorst and the Center Party to emerge in the German parliament. Winthorst was Bismarck's most vocal critic. Bismarck had realized how the Kulturkampf had failed and moved to reconcile with the Church. The Peace Law of 1886 abolished the Kulturkampf restrictions and resumed state aid to the Church. Bismarck now set his eye on stopping the threat of socialism within Germany. Since 1848, European nations were subject to violent revolutions that threatened the old order. As a staunch conservative, Bismarck sought to curb the influence of the growing Social Democrat Party. Two attempts to assassinate Emperor Wilhelm I led Bismarck to outlaw the party as a scapegoat. In 1879, Bismarck also turned on his liberal supporters by ending the doctrine of free trade that they supported. He placed tariffs to protect German industry and farming, drawing the support of the Center Party and the Conservatives. However, Bismarck appealed to both wings of parliament with his most successful program, the first European social welfare system. Though he failed with his Kulturkampf, Bismarck was able to successfully combat socialism through the compromises of his welfare system. The unification of Germany was the most important development in the late 19th century. A new rising power was formed with conflicts and compromises forged by iron and blood. The Second Reich would for the next half-century continue to modernize its industry and military, improving the standard of living, which led to a population boom and also further challenged the likes of other European countries like Britain. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor, would later be dismissed by Kaiser Wilhelm II in 1890 due to disagreements between the two. At the outbreak of the First World War and its subsequent defeat, Wilhelm II abdicated, and the new Weimar Republic accepted the Treaty of Versailles. Iron and blood may have led to the demise of the Second Reich, but they also, along with Otto von Bismarck, were the causes of the birth of the German nation-state.